my older brother, Steve, and I, when we were teens, just decided we're going to take the men in our family's work ethic, but we're going to put it into careers that actually can do something and create a legacy. So mine was lending and real estate. He became a doctor. And so, yeah, it was great wisdom. And I think it was shocking how quickly, when I had to rely on myself, how quickly I dug out.
Hi, I'm Tim Bratz, and every week I sit down with the top influential entrepreneurs in the country to discuss how to leave a true legacy in all things happiness, health, wealth, and wisdom. This is the Legacy Podcast. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Legacy Podcast. I am Tim Bratz, and today I'm sitting down with my buddy Tony Giordano. So Tony and I met at an event a couple of years ago and have stayed in touch, and I got a ton of respect for Tony and what he's done in business on the tech side, on the marketing side. I actually put down some notes here. Tony's been on CNBC. He's been on Bloomberg, Forbes, Bravo TV as a celebrity agent. And so he's renowned internationally as a speaker. He's got two-time best-selling author on a lot of things, on all things tech and business marketing. He was voted a John C. Maxwell World Top 100 leader and is ranked number 6 most influential in the real estate world. So he's got over 25 years of experience in the real estate industry, in both the finance and sales side. And Tony's got an addictive personality. He's got a ton of energy, ton of passion behind what he does. He's got his hands on a lot of different amazing business opportunities. And he's also got an incredible backstory with a lot of highs, a lot of lows. And I want to dive into all those things. So Tony, welcome, brother.
Thank you very much for the intro. And I'm honored to be on your podcast. I say the same things to you and your success.
Awesome, man. So let's dive in. You got a big social media following. You got a ton of accolades in the business world. You're on planes every single week, speaking around the country on massive stages in front of big audiences. And it's not always been that way. So I know you're a serial entrepreneur with hands in a lot of different things. Why don't we share a little bit about the backstory? How did you kind of become the entrepreneur? Tell me about some of the highs and lows. I know, from the market cycles over the past 25 years, there's been a lot of wild waves, and got you to where you are today, though, right? So maybe you can share some of your backstory, and then I want to dive into all the cool things that you're doing right now.
Yeah, born and raised in Southern California, came from extremely, humble beginnings. And most of my life, I knew I wanted to be a firefighter. I was going to grow up and get into the fire service. And so, going to school, graduate, was a lifeguard on the weekends, became a CPR instructor. Then I became a medic or an EMT. And then I didn't come from money. I didn't come from wealth. So I was just selling cell phones at the age of 20, door to door for AT&T at the time. This is 1998. And December of 98, just door to door sales guy. I walked into a mortgage company trying to save up enough money to put myself through the fire academy and become a firefighter. And walked in to sell them cell phones. And the branch manager of that mortgage company offered me a job. And she was just like, I think you'd be really good at this. She goes, and if there's anything that'll save up enough money faster for you to be able to go and chase your passion, it's selling loans instead of phones. And she showed me what I needed to do and just, call and refi people. And so I started doing that. And the day I started that job, I had no car. I lived out of my lifeguard duffel bag, with a couple pairs of shoes and stuff. I lived on a couch with 3 other guys in a dorm who all had the 3 bedrooms. It was like an apartment, and I just had the couch for $250 a month. And that was day one when I started a mortgage. 8 months later, I have my own 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhome on the hill with panoramic views of the ocean and Catalina out in the distance. I had a nice car. I was debt free. I had already been to 2 amazing vacation destinations because I won contests with the mortgage company as the #1 loan officer in their office. And it completely changed my life. And so 8 months later, I had enough money. And I'm big on, we see so many books that, nobody's 3 years old and wants to be a real estate agent or a loan officer when they grow up, right? We're striving to be all these different things. And my passion was, I'm going to be a firefighter. It doesn't matter how much money I'd made as a mortgage. So I resigned and I entered the 4-month full-time fire academy in Southern California, graduated, started testing with departments, went to medic school, but I was out of money. And so while I was testing with departments, I got picked up as a reserve firefighter. And I went back to the mortgage company to start doing loans again while I was trying to get on full time with the fire department. And my career took off. It was kind of like my second rookie of the year. I made like 160,000 in the year 2000 as a loan officer while going to school and being a firefighter. And then in 2001, it was like 200 and something thousand. And I'm a firefighter, just doing home loans, mostly for all the firefighters at the station. That was my biggest lead gen source. And then, September 11th happened. The fake housing market took off. The fake economy took off, because we all know that was the birth of everything that came crashing down in 08, 09. In 2004, at the age of 26, I made my first million, and pretty much had everything one would want. Married, 2 little toddlers. And in 2007, 2 little toddlers by 2007 now. I own my own mortgage company with 3 other partners. We're like the #1 brokerage of home loans in Southern California at the time. And I had the life. I had cars, boats, houses, properties, married, white picket fence, 2 small kids. And I lost everything after making millions in the 2008, 2009 crash. Everything. Divorce, youngest son's diagnosed with autism, mom's diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. I lost it all and went from an 812 FICO score to 496 in a matter of 9 months. And that was because I didn't come from wealth. And so I didn't respect it, right? I was too young, making too much money and not knowing what to do with that money. So I was over leveraged on everything. So when that crash happened, I crashed with it. And finally, it was like August of 09, and I lost my passion for lending. And I was already done with the fire department because of injuries. And so I couldn't rely on that career. And so I lost my passion for lending. And, as people like Tony Robbins say all the time, why do you do anything in your business without a passion for it? If you don't have a passion for the business you're in, get out, right? And so it wasn't fun anymore. So I decided to switch to the agent side because I already had the license. So I just switched and became a real estate agent and did the sales side of the business and left lending. And I started implementing things that no one was doing at the time. And this is September of 09, my first month as an agent. And I started implementing and taking a completely different approach to social media. It was brand new, but I saw a lot of people not knowing what it was. And it just clicked to me. And it's where humans are now. I don't need to go door knocking. I need to go door clicking. And if you take a human approach to the world of online and it's just where humans are, everything changes. And I started looking into SEO at the time before other people were, and understanding Google and Google results. And within 6 months after losing everything, I was already on my way to being Rookie of the Year in my office nationally for the company I was with at the time, the first brokerage that I went with, and just blew up. By the end of my rookie year in 2010, I was already rebuilding everything I lost. In 2011, I did triple the amount. 80% was coming from online presence and marketing and knowing how to market yourself, which as a marketing major, and I put marketing before anything, and a lot of people don't. They do this thing called lead with revenue. So they don't spend money on things until the revenue comes in, but marketing is what leads to revenue. So there are certain things where lead with revenue doesn't come into effect. And we know this story from everyone. Airbnb spending tens and tens of millions of dollars on marketing before they ever even had revenue to generate the revenue and be a $1 billion company in 18 months. And so I've always had this philosophy: do for your small business whatever $1 billion companies do for their $1 billion business, because it obviously works. And so finally, that led to writing the first book, The Social Agent. I was already speaking nationally for multiple brands on how I built my business through this stuff that I'm talking about. So I wrote the first book, The Social Agent, which is just teaching people how to build their business, any business, not just as an agent, insurance agent, a loan agent, a mechanic, just a small business owner. And in 2012, that became a bestseller. And I just thought it was just me wanting to write a book. I had no idea it was going to go in. And I don't even like calling the first one a book because it was 90 pages, looked like a pamphlet, but it still ended up becoming a bestseller. And in 2013, it just kind of took off with my speaking. Fast forward a few years, I started buying franchises of real estate companies to become an owner and not just be in the trenches of day-to-day production as an agent, building a team, building a staff. And then that's when I became a coach and started my own coaching company, teaching business owners how to build their business. And then that just led to the last few years of owning, multiple companies and focused on speaking, because at the end of the day, we all have to have a passion for something we do. And, you said it in the intro, and I appreciate that. It was a nice compliment, but I have been addictive. The audiences can see I'm addicted to teaching, and they become addicted to listening to it, because there's two things as a speaker that grows, that you need two things to be an extremely successful speaker where you get constantly called. And you have to be a great speaker. So you have to make sure you know how to speak and control an audience and all that. But then number two, what you teach actually works, right? Because if you're missing one of those things, you won't build a business. And so I stay in production. I stay doing all the things that I know business people have to do so that I know if it still works. And so I'm constantly evolving to see what's new. And now we have AI. So I'm constantly learning and researching so that I know what I teach actually is going to benefit the audience. And, that's my passion. There's nothing like when I walk out on a stage and I know that people are going to benefit from it. So that's the story.
Dude, I love it, man. And there's a lot to unpack there. And I think, let's start with what you just said about having the passion, getting on stage, and not only that, but like, I don't know, you didn't come out of the womb being a great speaker, right? You had to figure out, it's like a muscle that you got to grow and really become good at being a great speaker on stage, commanding the audience and staying relevant in the things that you're working in. How has being on all these stages opened you up for new opportunities?
A lot. First, I'll circle back with
bro, that's how we met. It's like,
yeah,
you were on Mark's stage and we
yeah.
got to hang out a little bit afterwards. And it's these connections that happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, speaking is a huge source of opportunity for me. Every time I speak, it leads to multiple opportunities. Even an audience of 200 leads to multiple additional opportunities. Audiences of 20,000, just multiply it. But going back to what you say, not being born a speaker, I always have to make sure anytime I'm talking about this that I give my dad major props. So at the age of 9, my dad wanted me to follow in his footsteps, which was become a minister. And my dad can, the second he starts talking on a stage to his church or congregation, he's
commands the audience.
Yeah, you're locked in, but he's, a minister. So behind the podium and that way. but he wanted me to follow in his footsteps. So at the age of 9, he was putting me up in front of the church and saying, tonight you're working on gestures, Tony. You're going to do a 5-minute sermon, and I want you to get gestures down. And then once I got gestures down, then the next month he goes, now I want you working on eye contact. And then it was timing. Then it was using a modern day illustration with something from the Bible. And by the age of 12, I'm a teacher. Mm-hmm. But in my 20s, as a mortgage broker, I wasn't really using it. I wasn't speaking at mortgage conferences at the time. Now I do a lot. And I was only using it, still trying to follow in his footsteps. But eventually and we don't have to get into that different presentation, but me and organized religion just don't get along. I'm spiritual. I believe in a creator. I believe in the next life, but it wasn't for me. And so I didn't use the skill for years until I rebuilt everything in the story I just told you about becoming a real estate agent and being asked to speak. And that just led to the first time speaking for free, for the company I was with. Like, yeah, I don't mind helping and speaking at your thing. And you don't mind speaking in front of an audience? I go, no, I did it my whole life. I just haven't needed to do it for the last 10 years. And so that skill led to people wanting to hear more, but then also what I teach works, as I said. So it just paved the way. And the opportunities, as you said, that's how we met. I wouldn't even know how to define how it leads to opportunities, but anytime you're speaking to a large audience and you captivate them and what you teach works, it's going to lead to more opportunity. And then somebody there is going to say, hey, would you mind, looking into this for me? And this is a business. And so
at what point do you differentiate? You got a lot of great opportunities, but there's only one best opportunity, right? At any given time that you could be possibly presented with. And there's a lot of opportunities that, are I wouldn't say below you, but not the highest and best use of your time, not the highest best use of your energy, not the highest and best use of your resources and connections and all those things. How do you differentiate between what you're going to spend your time on and what you're not going to spend your time on? Because that, to me, is the biggest distraction, right? How do you figure out what am I focusing on right now and what's going to be the best thing to move forward with?
My Achilles heel. It's so difficult.
You're a yes man, right? Like the way that we build our businesses is because we say yes and we just like figure it out and we just put more effort and energy towards these things. And then I find there's this crest and there's certain point of delineation where if you keep on going down that path and saying yes to everything, dude, you end up plateauing, right? And the difference between successful people and really successful people is really successful people say no to almost everything is what I've kind of found out.
Yeah.
And I've been very vigilant in how do I say no to a few more things and respectfully do it? Because you're a likable guy. I love to help people too. I'm a natural teacher as well. And dude, there were a lot of people who gave me the hand up of, hey man, how can I help you? Let me be a resource for you. All these things where they didn't need to. And I want to be that supporter for people who, aren't where I am yet. And so like, how do you differentiate that? And how do you still be respectful to saying no to certain things?
It's so difficult. I mean, again, it's my Achilles heel. I spread myself way too thin almost weekly because I care so much.
Yeah.
I'm even spending, just a couple of weeks ago, I got off stage and while I was doing my book signing, a lady said, do you have a few minutes after the line is gone? I just want to talk to you about something. And it turned into a 45-minute conversation. And I was late for the networking dinner. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to help her in the way that she wanted, where like I just had to say no. But I still spent so much time and like coaching her at that moment. So honestly, it's my Achilles heel. I can't say it enough. Like I have not learned how to differentiate and prioritize.
Well, I think you're doing some things in a very positive manner that you might not realize, but like your social media is awesome. And you put out a ton of content on social media for free. And you can direct a lot of people onto social media, into your books, into your speaking engagements. That is completely free for them to plug into and get a lot of the resources and insights. If they really want to hunt and search for the value that you can provide, that is always there, and it's evergreen. They can search at 2:00 in the morning, they can spend 10 minutes on it, or they can spend 10 hours on it, and that's available. And I've used that as a, hey, listen, I get a ton of requests. And actually, dude, your people, you have a good gatekeeper too. Because when I sent you the message on Instagram, they're like, Tony gets 10 requests a day on jumping on podcasts. And you were like, oh, Tim's my boy, man. I'd love to be on Tim's podcast. And so, but I think there's a couple things that you do have in place in order to try to safeguard your time.
Sure.
But one of those big things is give group time to the masses for free. That's kind of what I figured out. And the serious students are going to be members of your coaching or members of your mastermind or members of where it's like, I'm serious. I'm going to take this information. I'm going to invest in myself to be able to be around Tony a little bit more often and get that one-on-one time. And that's kind of how I've differentiated it for me and my business. Is like, I don't really grab coffee. I don't grab coffee anymore unless it's somebody who comes from a very high recommendation from somebody I really respect. Otherwise, I'm like, the best way for us to connect is through social media or join my coaching.
Well, and so there's 4 layers. There's 4 layers. So first of all, the show Shark Tank has helped me substantially. So, I've learned to do what they do on Shark Tank. Like, I'm not going to, I'll come in, but I'm not going to come in for less than 5% or 10%. That's how
great point. It's got to have enough upside and potential and opportunity for you to even get involved in something.
Exactly. So there's 4 layers. Layer 1 is the people you're talking about. Just follow me and you'll see some stuff for free and hopefully it helps you grow. Then layer 2 is why I started the Rise Masterminds program, which is $50 a month. They get 2 live calls with me every month. They're on with a few hundred other people, but it's me teaching something, answering questions, and it's just so cheap. And you also get my entire curriculum, all of my webinars, they're all in this on-demand porthole. I mean, you get a lot for $50 a month, and that's layer 2. And most people can do that to build their business. And then layer 3 is the consulting, one-on-one. I'm coming in, and that I have to prioritize, right? Because I can only do so many one-on-ones. And these are companies that I know have a huge upside where there's also an equity earn in. And then layer 4 turns into the equity. If I have a piece of the company, then of course I'm always there consulting and on their advisor board and stuff like that. But that's the best way I can. And then just have other people who say no for me so that I don't have to say no. Like Josh, when you guys reached out, his job is to scrub those because, we just get so many requests for me to do podcasts and things like that. Yeah. So he's very good at what he does.
I love it, man. And so when you look at all those different things, what do you find is the highest and best use of your time that trickles to each one of those 4? Like I see myself, like I have, a real estate investment company. I have deal acquisitions. We're always raising private money for our projects. Well, we're always trying to refine our operations. We have the coaching program. I have a software now and all these other things. I find that the highest and best use of my time personally is if I can create content that educates, that inspires, that entertains, and talks about all those different things. As the CEO, I think the highest and best use of my time is promoting the business, right? And marketing the business to be the fuel that feeds each one of these different engines. Would you say that that's similar for you?
Hands down. So layer 1, I got to make sure I give them something on social media, that they're just following me for free so that eventually they turn into maybe people who want to join the program. Layer 2, better show up for that live call every 2 weeks, no matter what. Don't cancel it, or if you do cancel it, reschedule it, but they're paying you for that 2 live calls a month, right? So I have to make sure I'm always showing up for that, which is easy. And then layer 3, create that content and help the company build their business one-on-one and dive deep. And so, yeah, it all goes back to content And that's why, you know, a lot of my headlines on social media, my little bios at the top, if you open and read the whole thing, it says researcher, because I research all day. I'm constantly just reading and learning and researching new things so that I can always create that new content that's valuable to people. But it goes back, you know, you said something, and I can't stress this enough to people. I did this to about 1,000 people a couple of days ago on Focus this year in 2025 with time management. We always hear it, time blocking, how you prioritize your time, but so many people are horrible at it. They get distracted. And it goes back to what you said, is super successful people say no a lot, but it's because of one thing. They know their hourly worth rate, or if they're a billionaire, they know their minutely worth rate. Meaning, if they make millions of dollars a year, they divide that by 52, divided by 40 hours a week, whatever that number is. If it's, you know, $4,000 an hour, and somebody's trying to go to coffee for 30 minutes, is this worth $2,000 out of my pocket? You know, what are we talking about? And so when we know our worth rate, and the worth rate can't be what you make in 2024 divided by 52 divided by 40, it has to be what you want to make. So if you want to make $5 million a year, take 5 million divided by 52 divided by 40, whatever that number is. Now watch how you learn to say no. Now watch how you think when somebody wants to take 30 minutes of your time. We're not talking about our friends on the weekend who want you to help them move. Like, I'm not going to be like, it's just not worth 20 grand out of my pocket, you know, to help you move. But in the day-to-day business hours, how do you use your time? And Bill Gates said it in his book. I believe one of his books, but he said something, or I heard it, or heard he said it. But if he's walking on a sidewalk in front of a bank and sees a brand new crisp $100 bill on the sidewalk, he does not stop, bend down, and pick it up and start walking again, because he actually spent more money picking up that $100 bill in the seconds it took than the value of the bill. And, you know, when I tell audience, they're like, well, that's Bill Gates. And I go, yeah, but I like to think I've gotten to the point. I'm not Bill, but, you know, if I see a crisp $5 bill, you know, leave it for the next guy, right? I'll keep walking. You know, that's just not worth my time. But if it's $10, I'm probably picking it up.
That's awesome. And I love that. I think that gives us a quantitative approach to how do you protect your time. And the other thing is, you can play with these inputs, right? Like, maybe you want to take 2 months off a year, right? I want to take July off, and I want to take December off, and I just want to hang out and go to Christmas markets with my family in Europe in December, and then I want to go and hang out and travel around the country and in July, right, with the kids. And so when I think about it, I'm like, all right, so now I need to take it down to 10 months. And of those 10 months, I don't want to work 40 hours a week. I want to work 25 hours a week, because I want to take Fridays off, and I want to limit it to 6 hours or whatever it is the other 4 days of the week, and work within certain confines. And I start creating these constraints. And when I put these constraints in place, it starts making you think, man, because a lot of the times we get to a certain level by just saying, I'm going to do more, right? Hey, Tony, how'd you become the top sales guy in the mortgage brokers that you worked with? Well, I just made more phone calls and got more no's than anybody else. And at the same time, you talk about Bill Gates. Well, Bill Gates has the same 24 hours in a day that Tony Giordano has, right? How does he all of a sudden turn this into hundreds of billions of dollars versus tens of millions or whatever it is, or hundreds of thousands, or, you know, for whoever's, you know, looking at these different opportunities? It's like, well, you put these constraints in place. I did it when I was trying to flip more houses. I was like, all right, well, if I go from 5 houses a month to 8 houses a month, dude, that's just doing more of the same activity versus 5 houses a month. Let's put a constraint in my head of, how do I do 50 houses a month? Dude, I can't just possibly do more, right? You got to start thinking at a different level and putting different systems in place and processes, and probably hiring the right person. And these additional levels of thought start coming in when you really stretch yourself, whether I get to 50 or not. Or, you know, I decided to move over to apartment buildings and commercial real estate, and took it to another level, but I never even got to 50, but I was able to start flipping, 15 houses a month by just coming up with these different solutions and different ideas. And so I love what you said on creating different constraints and quantifiably measuring, that progress.
For sure. Yeah.
This episode of the Legacy Podcast is brought to you by the Legacy Boardroom Mastermind. So our goal is to give as much free information away as humanly possible through all of our social media platforms and try to help people with their businesses, help people with their lives. We also have something for people who want more one-on-one attention, which is Legacy Boardroom. Legacy Boardroom is a board of directors for your business. If you are doing up to about $10 million a year in gross revenue, you're making some money, you got some good things happening, but maybe you can't afford a C-suite of executives, of a chief marketing officer, a chief operating officer, a chief investment officer, a chief human resources officer, and you need access to these fractional C-suite executives. That's what this was built for, at a fraction of the price of what you can find anywhere else in the marketplace. So it's my actual team who have built multiple 7 and 8 and 9-figure businesses and real estate portfolios that is available every single day of the week on these daily boardroom calls. So any questions that you have, you can hop on, ask questions about operations to my COO, ask questions about acquisitions to my CMO, ask questions about raising private money to my chief investment officer, or team building to my chief HR officer. So they're available for you 5 days a week. Any questions that you have, any hurdles that you're facing, anything that you need, these guys are available to help you break through any sort of barriers and take your business to the next level so that way you can build a business that is designed to feed your life and your lifestyle. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, check out legacyboardroom.com. So I want to go back to, you were talking about like the Great Recession, right? 08 to 09 was just a very dark place for a lot of people across the country. And it spread because, contractors were affected, title companies were affected, mortgage brokers were affected, real estate brokers, investors, obviously, like all these different people were affected by it. And it was on every newspaper. And it's when I first started getting involved in real estate investing. I worked for a big home builder in 2005 and had a painting company and all that stuff. I started investing and had a brokerage, my own brokerage, but had a real estate license in 2008. And I really started investing in 2009, right as the market started collapsing. And I was like, holy smokes. Fast forward about 15 years, 12, 15 years. Commercial real estate has gone through the Great Recession of commercial real estate over the past 2 years. Interest rates have skyrocketed unlike it's ever seen since the Fed funds rate started, playing with the Federal Reserve started playing with the Fed funds rate. Insurance has spiked, doubled, quadrupled in some marketplaces. Labor costs have skyrocketed. Material costs have inflated like crazy. And values in commercial real estate have reduced by somewhere between 20 to 35%, depending on the asset class that you're in and your asset, that all from external factors, right? I'm a big believer that you control the controllables and there's ways to manage beyond that. But there's been a lot of people in a very dark spot in commercial real estate, and it's not been publicized the way that residential was 15 years ago because not as many people are affected by the commercial real estate side of things. What would you say to some of those people who are like, dude, I had to give properties back. I think the world's crumbling. All the walls are caving in on me. What were some things that you were able to do in order to keep a positive mindset and try to get through those really dark times when everything was being taken away from you?
Well, hopefully I don't get emotional, but I think that my mom is definitely a factor, or was a factor. You lost her in 2013, but she's always a factor in having a strong mindset and believing in yourself, and always focus on people who believe in you instead of the naysayers. But it wasn't easy, and I think that everybody has in their life by the age of 50 or 60. 5 main turning point moments in their life that have defined who they are. And I can name each one through childhood, teens, 20s, 30s. And I don't think I've had the the fifth main one yet. I have five, but I don't know if one's going to be replaced. September 11th was one of my moments. I think I became a man that day. And it kind of changed who I was as a person and what I believed in and the foundation of being a man and from a boy. But the crash was definitely another one. And so during the crash, I had the moment, and I was trying to get two deals that were taking forever to close. I wasn't a real estate agent yet. It was like kind of what made me decide to become an agent, because I'm in my bathroom, I'm shaving, and I have cream everywhere because I have to shave this too. And I've lost everything. So it's a little phone booth shower, a little pedestal sink, and a little toilet. And I'm shaving, and my phone buzzes, and my loan processor said, "Hey, I don't know how to tell you this." And I'm like reading it, but both deals aren't going to close. They've been declined by the bank. And I'm like, a month and a half behind on rent. I'm bartending on the weekends to put food on the table for my kids, every other weekend when I have them. And I just remembered looking in the mirror, and I just grabbed the pedestal sink, and I grabbed it so hard and shook it that it kind of ripped away from the drywall. The medicine cabinet mirror snapped off, hit the ground. I slipped and fell because there was a little water on the ground. I was wearing a towel because I had just got out of the shower, and I have shaving cream all over me. And on the way down, I hit the back of my head on the towel bar, and I hit the ground, and I just started crying and breaking down. And I probably sat in there for a couple minutes, just didn't even open my eyes. And right when I opened my eyes, there was a piece of mirror broken in the corner on the ground, and I saw my face. And what I saw in that reflection, I never wanted to see ever again. It was just this useless victim, woe is me, why me, right? And I just didn't like what I saw. And I got up, I smiled and wiped the dust off. And that was a huge turning point. And then a couple days later, because those didn't close, I had to call my godfather, my grandpa's brother, my great uncle Mike, who had been helping me through the crash with giving me money and trying to help me get out of it because he saw the success I had. And I called him and I said, "Uncle Mike, I have a new motivation. I'm switching to the agent side. I'm done. I just want to let you know, everything's going to be amazing. I'm going to pay you back, but these two deals fell out. And if you can give me just a little, just 1 month." And he goes, "Nope." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "I'm not giving you any more." And I said, "Uncle Mike, please, this is the last time." He's just like, "No, Tony." He goes, "You want to know the number one reason you're still where you are in the 18 months you've been doing this in this crash?" And I said, "Well, the economy, everything, it's all happening at the same time." He goes, "That's not the reason." And I go, "What's the reason?" He goes, "I am." He goes, "I'm the reason you're still where you are." He goes, "Because I keep funding, making it possible for you to stay in the spot you're in." He goes, "Tony, you will be shocked what a human being is able to achieve when they can't rely on anyone else. And I'm not going to let you rely on me anymore." And that week was the big moment.
The level of wisdom. What's his background, Uncle Mike?
He was, all the family came from Sicily in the early 1900s, just very humble beginnings. He worked for, I think the company's called Rocketdyne, the engineering company, kind of like Lockheed and stuff like that. But he was an engineer for them, retired. but not super wealthy or anything, just a great job for 30 years and retired. And but he had a very strong mindset. All of the men in my family on the Giordano side of our family all have extremely high work ethic. Unfortunately, they just were carpet layers and landscapers and stuff like that. So my older brother, Steve, and I, when we were teens, just decided we're going to take the men in our family's work ethic, but we're going to put it into careers that actually can do something and create a legacy. So mine was lending and real estate. He became a doctor. And so, yeah, it was great wisdom. And I think it was shocking how quickly, when I had to rely on myself, how quickly I dug out. Like, it was amazing. So, without question, he was a big, foundation of keeping the positive mindset. And then, I always tell people, you always have to think of the positive of any negative thing. So example, how hard is it for all of us to wake up in the morning and see that 25 5-year-olds were shot to death out of school that morning somewhere in the United States? How do you stay positive that day? Well, of course, you're going to be angry. You're going to feel sad, depressed. But at one point, I'm going to have to say, how can I play a part in preventing this? Like, maybe I should offer to go and speak to every elementary school and middle school in my county for free, just to teach about how I was bullied as a kid and look at my life, and I was able to overcome, horrible thoughts and stuff when everybody would always be picking on me. And I'm not going to know if I changed anything, but maybe, just maybe, there's a kid in that audience who's really had a bad year. And maybe what I said that day, I'll never know, but maybe that's taking something so negative and feeling like I'm playing a part to try to make a difference. So mindset is everything, like at the end of the day. And if you have a negative mindset or disbelief or self-doubt, you're not going anywhere. Everybody always talks about, oh, you have to be fearless. What are you talking about? No, you have to have fear. Like, I can't stand no fear campaigns or you just got to go for it and be fearless. No. You don't think a tightrope walker that's going over a 200-foot canyon with no harness, you don't think he has fear, even though he's practiced it so many times? You don't think he has a fear of a 100-mile-an-hour gust of wind coming out of nowhere, even though the forecast said 0 wind that day? Like, oh no, there's fear, which is why he gets to the other side, because fear makes you focus. Fear makes you focus on doing it right and not making a mistake. Self-doubt is the killer. Fear is not. It's self-doubt of you not believing you can get to the other side. That's the difference.
And how do you overcome that? How do you build that level of confidence to overcome self-doubt?
Gratitude. You like always thinking, my papa, my grandfather, I remember as a kid, he was like, never live your life with the attitude that it can only get better. Because then that means you're at the bottom, and no one is ever. There's 20 million people in the world, probably 1 billion people in the world that wish they could live your bad days over and over and over again for the rest of their life. What you consider a bad day, Tony, they would live that day over and over because it is 20 times better than their bad days. And so he said, don't live your life with the attitude it can only get better. Live your life with the gratitude it can always be worse. So I think having a positive mindset goes to the belief of, what do you have? What have you achieved? What are your accolades? Those are the things you should focus on. The people who believe in you, not the naysayers. Don't focus on proving the wrong people wrong. You already know they're wrong. Focus on proving the right people right, the believers. And, that's my philosophy. That's my quote, if you will. And my big why and purpose is every day I wake up saying, who can I help change their mindset today and no longer focusing on proving the wrong people wrong, which so many of us do, and start changing your focus to proving the right people right.
Dude, it's powerful, man. I love that. I love the mindset stuff. And I love seeing that it's a recurring theme across ultra successful people like yourself and many of the mentors in my life is, dude, that's where it all comes from, right? It all stems from gratitude. Everybody's pursuing this happiness. And the reality is, dude, we have it made. Like, as you're talking, there's a statistic I saw about 6 months ago talking about gratitude, actually. And I was looking up like interesting stats of like what people have or don't have and what the percentages that people have like around the world and stuff. Dude, you realize 92% of the population of the world does not have air conditioning. 92% of everybody in the world doesn't know what it's like to have air conditioning, right? Like we're able to walk against the wall, press a button because there's a little chill in the air and increase the temperature by one singular degree. Like that's a godlike power. You know, I think about this stuff. It's like, you know, you think about John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, who are the wealthiest people that ever lived. And they didn't have what the normal American has today at their availability and disposal of central heat and air, running water that's clean and purified, right? Coming right to their house, being able to, you know, use the restroom that's inside their home, press a button and all the waste gets taken away. I think about these things all the time of how good we have it. We have it better than royalty from just 150 years ago, like better than the wealthiest and highest elites in society, the average person today. And people just, they let it pass by in their thoughts all the time.
Yep, I know.
So
it's crazy.
It is, man. It's wild to think about. But
it really is.
I want to talk about what is happening. You got a lot of amazing things going on. Let's talk about 2025. What are you working on? Where are the opportunities? What are you excited about over the next 12 months? And I want to kind of bring it home of like, what do we celebrate in 12 months from now, Tony?
You know, I've always been a believer that, you know, I want to see, you know, a minimum of 10% growth in every single category of my life each year. 10% growth spiritually, with, you know, personal life, business life, my companies grow by 10%, this grows by 10%. I'm constantly just tracking that. So in 12 months, I celebrate as long as I have that minimum growth.
How do you quantify that for some of the less quantifiable things? Obviously the business is easy. Health, you know, you can look at certain metrics on your weight or your body fat percentage and how quickly you run a mile. Well, how about spirituality or mental growth and your relationships? How are you quantifying those things?
Yeah, I don't think I can quantify the percentage. I just quantify, am I changing for the better? Am I working on things that I know I need to work on and I've been able to overcome them, whatever it might be. You know, we all go through crazy things or personal obstacles and stuff like that. But, you know, I believe that I always am wanting to get better and learn from previous mistakes, you know, just like a fighter, you know, who faces another opponent in the ring. And, you know, one of my topics that I teach is called 5 rounds to succeeding. And it's taken from the 5 rounds of a cage fight in the UFC. But it could be even boxing and stuff like that. But round 1 is size up, right? You size up your opponent. A lot of times you see them kind of just walking around when they first. So like anytime an adversity hits me or an obstacle, I close my eyes and I pretend that this giant just walked into the cage and it's round 1. So I'm going to have to size this up in order to survive. Round 2 is mindset. Now I have to believe that because I got through round 1, I can get through round 2. So now my mindset kicks in after I've sized up the issue. Round 3 is accountability, both negative and positive. So round 3 is I have to hold myself accountable for previous round mistakes, which we always talk about accountability as a negative thing. Oh, I'm accountable for that. Oh, I hold myself accountable for that. But what about, are you holding yourself accountable to now get through the next 2 rounds, the positive side? Hold yourself accountable to succeed, not just think of the mistakes that you have to work on. And so round 3 is accountability. Round 4 is heart, right? That's where our heart kicks in. You know, you hear them talk about that all the time, fighters, like, oh, well, you know, so-and-so, if they're going to win, they need to knock them out in round 1 because, you know, so-and-so, he can go the distance and he fights just as strong because he's got more cardio and more heart. So round 4 is heart. That's where that kicks in. You're about to win. And then round 5, you win. And then I've always believed that our legacy is what we do with the success, what we do with the wealth we've earned. You know, one fighter makes $100 million and buys yachts and has no money in a few years. And the other one became a philanthropist and changed the world and built houses with his earning, you know, whatever it might be. So legacy is what we do with our successes. And so, you know, I don't know if that actually answered it, but at the end of the day, you know, I just measure growth on all aspects of my life, read more books, you know, meet people. But going back to one thing about the mindset, it's our circle. You know, I've seen negative circles of people and I can't stand it. Like I've been around people where, you know, everybody's just gossiping of other people and I'm just sitting there quiet and I'm just not a believer. It's just toxic. Or they talk or they do things that are toxic or they don't have purpose. And any time you're around people, like if you're if you're the smartest, most positive person in your circle, you need a new circle. Right? You need to surround yourself by people who have succeeded more than you, both in all aspects, physically, financially, spiritually. You need to be around people who have strong, positive mindsets, even more than you do, because they're going to push you to those different next levels. And so it always, to me, has been, who am I circled with? And that keeps a positive mindset for sure.
How have you found those rooms?
Speaking, opportunity, meeting so many people across the United States and now in so many other countries. And so I call it my symbolic table of influence. And it's actually on my whiteboard, on my big organizational chart of all my companies. Right in the middle is the symbolic table of influence. And there's 6 people around the table. And those names change. And when I take a name out, it's not that I'm not going to continue staying in touch with them and be a part of their life. It's just that the table's constantly changing because as I grow and succeed, I'm now becoming equal or surpassing somebody on that table. So now I need to find a new person to replace that. And the names are actually right there on my whiteboard. And I never tell anybody who the names are and even that they are, but they're on there so that every day in my office, when I'm looking at my organization, I see those names and it reminds me, when's the last time you reached out to them? When's the last time you went and had dinner with them? You know, and
do they each represent a different kind of pillar of life? Like, is one a finance expert, one's relationships, one's spirituality, one's more personal development, one like.
To a degree, but not emphasized on that one thing. Like they all have major financial success. One might be more spiritual. One might have done it this way, but it's just people with strong, positive mindsets and success in so many aspects of their life that I can continue learning from. And, you know, I've even gone to the point, you know, I don't tell them, but you know, there's times where I'm like, gosh, they live on the East Coast. It's been a while since we talked. And I'm not going to call them and say, hey, I'd love to fly out and have dinner with you. I'm going to call them and be like, hey, are you going to be in town in the next couple of weeks in Miami? I may need to go out there for a meeting. And while I'm in town, I'd love to just see if you're in town. We'll connect, you know, and they're like, yeah, I actually am going to be here next week, like blah, 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 blah. And now, you know, go out there. And it was really just to have dinner with. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think, you know, there's been so many great nuggets out of this conversation. So, man, I always appreciate you. Got a ton of respect for you. What I'd love to do is I want you to share what you're working on right now that we were talking about beforehand, because it is a game changer for the capital raising industry. It's a game changer for real estate entrepreneurs and investors and developers and all those kinds of things. And it's got a lot of really, really cool things that applications, I guess, that it can be used for. And you're leading the charge on a lot of this stuff. So can you explain a little bit about how you're utilizing technology, distressed properties and opportunities, and real estate, and kind of combining all those things in order to attack this new opportunity of yours?
Yeah, there's three things that I'm mostly, focused on for 2025 right now. Obviously, technology in all categories when it comes to the next evolution. So a lot of the AI and AI portals and how to use it correctly, how not to use it. So a ton of content creation is going into that right now, followed by constantly I'm just staying in the front of cryptocurrency, blockchain, how it's being used in real estate, how people are buying property and all over. That's where I get the CNBC segments and stuff like that, and just the evolution and how it's continued to grow. And it's not what people thought, and it is going to change the world. And teaching people how to trade it through courses that I created and stuff like that, because it is going to create wealth and it's here to stay. So staying in the front of that always. And then the third one that you're talking about is a good, very close friend of mine has launched an app. And the app has been around now for a couple years, and it's completely revolutionizing the way people invest in real estate. And I put the link in the chat for you to be able to click on it so you can download the app and kind of check it out, Tim. And then what I'll do is I'll send you a different one for when you do the podcast for those that are listening and they want to, download the app and check it out. But you go into the app and you are able to look at all these different properties all over in the US and now in even a couple other countries. And his name is Stephen Belmont. His nickname is Bellwood Investments. And you are able to go in as a non-accredited investor. You don't have to be an accredited investor. That has nothing to do with SEC or securities. And he just purchased, it's been all over the news. It was the $21 million purchase of the unfinished house of a celebrity in Malibu beachfront. And it got a ton of publicity because what he does is you go in and he allows people to fund it and get a recorded deed of trust against that property that now will sell for twice as much because it's distressed and he's going to do the construction. And so you become a fractional owner of these different properties and you get the deed of trust recorded against the property. It tells you what the after remodel value will be in 18 months or whenever it sells. You can see that even a real estate correction, if we had it, you're still getting your money back based off of the stats that they have. But obviously you have to do your own due diligence. And it's crazy that it took this long for something like this to be out there, to where people who may not have $2 million to go and buy their own investment properties or multifamily properties or luxury distressed properties to flip, or tract homes distressed to flip that need a remodel. It's not just millions. He's got $700,000 houses on there. And be able to say, oh, I can offer 10,000, I can offer 30,000. You know what? I'm going to do 10,000. It's got a 40% return ARV, and submit offer accepted, sign NDA signed, deed of trust sent to me, proof of deed of trust recorded against the house. And now I know I have a deed. And that is going to change everything.
Well,
it already has.
So I want to
they already
recap
have they already have like 200 million in assets of real estate and stuff like that. So this has not just been around for a month, and he's been on CNBC, Forbes, Bloomberg, TMZ, because it's like, how did it take so long for this to be out there? So he calls it the democratization of real estate investing.
And I think about it, and I think, all right, so high level on this is, let's say there's a property, and right now the way that real estate investing works is, let's say I'm flipping an apartment building, I'm flipping a house or whatever, and I'm going to go get a loan from either a hard money lender, private money lender, or a bank in order to give me that loan against this property. I'm going to give them a mortgage, or a deed of trust is what it's called, depending on the state that you're in, a promissory note, and then they're listed as additional insured on the insurance, typically those couple of things. The issue is, you got a first lien position, and then there's a second lien position if you want to go and get a second lien, or a third lien or fourth lien or whatever. And it is perceived as more risky the more liens that are on the property, but that's not necessarily the case, right? If you got a property that's worth $1 million, and the first lien's 100 grand, and the second lien's 10 grand, and the third lien's 40 grand, and the fifth lien is 5 grand, you're still under 20% loan to value on this deal, right? And so that's really the figure that needs to be paid attention to, not necessarily how many liens are on the property, because what you said is it's a way to solve a problem. Because I need somebody, if I'm going to go flip $1 million property, to write me a check for $800,000 or $1 million in order to then sell it for 1.5 million. So it needs to be typically an accredited investor or somebody with big, deep pockets, or both, or have to syndicate it across a bunch of accredited investors in order to then go fund that deal. And so it doesn't allow, the normal, hardworking, middle-class American to then get involved in these higher rates of return that are only available for big check writers. And so, to your point, it democratizes the opportunity to then go and invest in these things. And I think the reason it hasn't existed before is because, dude, it's a nightmare on a paper trail, right? And it hasn't had the software, it hasn't had the automated securitization the way that it's been built out now for him. And now, are these deals all in California, or are they all across the country?
All across the country. Not every
is Bo the operator on all these, or is it different operators can upload their deals to the platform? And it's kind of like a crowdfunding, but it's actually secured by a deed, which is a deed of trust or a mortgage, which is why it kind of doesn't need to be under SEC regulation, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a deed of trust. You're just a private money lender, and then he's also giving you a cut of the profit of when the property is flipped. So you get your money back and the piece of the profit. That being said, going back to what you said, so he doesn't allow other people who flip properties to use his porthole to do that. Mm-hmm. All of these are his investments that the company buys. He does allow agents, so there's a couple layers to it. He allows agents, if they see a distressed property hit the market, or they found a distressed property, they can just go in and submit property. His back end operations team looks at the property, tells them what they're willing to offer, writes up the offer. The agent who showed them the property gets to act as the agent for the offer to the sellers or to the listing agent. And then if they accept it, Bellwood now becomes the owner of it. The agent got a commission, and now that agent gets to list it when they go to flip it. Mm-hmm. So that's layer one on how to use it, but just not if you're your own flipper trying to raise money, to close. And then the other layer is being an investor, like going in and actually investing in these properties and seeing all the stats. And it's very, very detailed. We're kind of just barely scratching the surface on it, but you see the details, you see the BPO, you see ARV, you can also do your own research on what properties are selling for in the area. But yeah, if there's 300 deed of trust against the one that I'm talking about in Malibu that was bought for 21 million, 300 deeds of trust that all add up to about 7 million, plus the private money first lien that's on it, that all added up to that 21 million to purchase it. And construction is going to be 7 million. And all BPOs and all experts in the area say that when that property is done, it's selling for anywhere from 48 to 52 million. Then, no matter what, all the people in the 21 million deeds of trust are getting their money back. It's just be silly not to. There'd have to be a 50% crash across the nation, which we all know there's nothing that indicates that, because there's just no inventory in the United States.
There's no inventory.
No,
even in that higher end space,
we're not building enough properties in the United States, and we haven't for decades. But definitely,
and it's only going to get worse because none of these builders have been taken out, been banking land, or putting improvements and approvals in place on land developments and new home developments and those things. And so it's just getting worse and worse. And when I say worse and worse, it's obviously relative based on which side of the coin you're on. But from a supply standpoint, less and less supply, more and more demand, which means prices are going to keep on pushing up regardless of what happens economically. It's just supply and demand, So, dude, I think it's super, super interesting. I'm excited to check out the app. And the other thing is, dude, I think, obviously he can make a boatload of cash himself personally, which is awesome with what he's doing. But dude, I think the bigger play is the software play. And if he turns around, takes this thing and makes it accessible for other people to then upload their deals, raise more money, the amount of data that he would be able to collect from that, and a percentage of each of those deals that he would be able to get from the software play side of things, is dramatic. Or he gets a little piece of equity in all these other different deals that everybody else is out there flipping. Dude, that's going to play and completely passive and infinitely scalable. That to me is really the play.
As he said a couple of weeks ago, when I asked, if that is on the horizon, he goes, not yet. He goes, but they know what they've built. They know that the software and the patent on it that they have, they know it's game changing for
that's way bigger
to other people.
He can figure it out.
He's truly an authentic soul that really wants to help. And so it's funny. I'll say this about Bo. Every time I talk about the profits and I tell people about the app and why it's creating wealth for people and why it's easy for people to do it, he always kind of stops me if we're in a group and talking about it. And he goes, but it's also what we can do as a people together. And he explains it as like, imagine 30 people who live in a neighborhood come together in the app to raise money to buy that one or two properties in their neighborhood that are ran down, and they go in together in the app to now buy the property and renovate it and improve their neighborhoods together. Or imagine what we can do, with the fires. I was in the heart of the fires in Palisades in Malibu recently, and there's going to be neighborhoods that need to be rebuilt. And it's things like this that can really help people, now that the software has been created, to be able to come together and unify to rebuild things for other people. So, it's almost the opposite of companies like BlackRock and Blackstone, who want to own over half of all single family.
Power back to the people, man.
Yeah, give it back to the people. And that's why companies like that probably aren't going to like the rise of this, because it allows other people to do it fractionally, because so many people don't have the wealth to do it themselves, or have created the wealth yet. So it's pretty outstanding.
It's exciting, man. So, dude, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all the value you've shared with our audience. Where can people connect with you? I'd love to, give me the link also for your coaching on the $50 a month thing. I'd love to be able to share that with folks, and so that way they can stay connected with you. So where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, no problem. We'll just name one social account. So the easiest place for people to connect with me would be Instagram, Tony_Giordano. That's my personal Instagram account, Tony_Giordano. LinkedIn is just Tony Giordano, but the URL is /the social agent. So you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn, connect with me there. And then the mastermind program, once again, 2 live calls with me live every month, but in the porthole, if somebody's on this call or listening to this podcast and they're not in real estate and they're in insurance or they're a small business owner, you don't have to be a real estate agent. You'll see topics in there that are about real estate, but there's a lot about building your brand, marketing, anything like that. And that's risemasterminds.com. risemasterminds.com. It'll show you everything you get. Scroll down to the bottom and you'll see that it's a discount VIP page, and it takes the price from $200 a month, which is also nothing for what you get, to 50 for this podcast of yours.
Awesome, brother. Well, I'll tell you what, man. Thank you so much for being here. Guys, if you're not connected with Tony, make sure that you follow him, Tony_Giordano on Instagram. We'll share the links to everything that you just shared in the show notes as well. And
Giordano, Giordano, right, with a Tony.
And awesome, man. Well, just thank you so much. If you're ever on the East Coast, hit me up, man. I'd love to see you. And I actually might be in California a little bit later this year, so I'll give you a shout on that. Would love to see you if I come out your way.
Sure. Definitely, bud.
Thanks, brother.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Hey, well, thank you for being here. Hopefully you got a ton of great value out of this episode. You know, we try to give as much free value as possible across all of our social media platforms. So please make sure that you're connected with us. We are at Legacy Wealth on YouTube. We are at Tim Bratz on all other social media platforms, and we're available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. The best way that you can support this podcast is by just subscribing to our YouTube channel, by liking the video, by commenting on it, and by sharing it with anyone else who might get some great value out of it. So thank you again for being here. We'll see you next Sunday on the Legacy Podcast.